Great. Okay, we are live. Okay, so hello, Mandy, and
Hi.
thank you for joining us. I know that you're
Thank you
really
for having
keen
me.
to share your experience to be able to help
Absolutely.
others, um,
Absolutely.
and we can talk about how that happened as people start joining us. And I know you're one of Susannah Salt's patients, and you can mention that later as well when people start joining us.
Sure.
So for now, though, you're in the UK, which is nice. So we're from same time zone, and you are a yoga teacher. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
How long have you been a yoga teacher? And is that something you've done all your life, or
I've
is it more
no,
recent?
not at all. I've been practicing yoga for probably 20 years now. But I only decided to take a yoga teacher training in 2017.
Okay.
And it was the Shivananda teacher training because one of my yoga teachers at that time was really encouraging, and she's still my daily yoga teacher now, and she's very
Right.
wonderful. And she, I guess it's with her with her encouragement that I did it. She said, "Oh, I think you're ready to do this," and I think without that little push, I probably wouldn't have done it. And
Mm-hmm.
I didn't do it with a view to becoming a full-time yoga teacher. I did it more for on a personal development level.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and again, that was another thing that it's pretty much changed my life because it's a very spiritual training,
Mm-hmm.
quite deep,
Right.
um, very quite harsh training. I promise you. Even though we were in the Bahamas, it was a harsh month,
Right.
and it went through quite a lot of self development. Let's say
Mm,
lots of crying on the
right.
beach.
Well, nicer crying on a beach than on your
Yeah.
own somewhere in a room.
But I don't regret doing it.
Great.
Um,
So,
and
when did you decide to actually become a teacher and use it as your work,
well,
or do you not?
no, I do, but only
Yeah.
on a very small level.
Right.
I teach from home. I teach mainly friends. The I was doing like small groups here at home, and actually the Zoom thing in COVID times in lockdown
Mm,
became quite lovely because then my children who were in London and my friends' kids who were all over the country, they were all able to join as well on Zoom.
oh
So at
yes.
one point we had quite a nice little group going,
Yeah.
um, and so that that was lovely to do in lockdown.
Absolutely.
Um, but it's I don't do it as a I do it to pass the teachings on rather to it's not my livelihood. It's not my
Right.
I just felt I needed to use it, and I loved seeing how people took to it, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, that
I
sounds
love it
lovely.
really, but I do it more as a out of love rather than need.
Yes, yeah, no, and that sounds nice. Oh, I was just going to say hello to people, but Scott's already saying hello. So hello, Scott. And yes, if anybody else wants to come in and just say hello, so we know who's there, rather than just chatting amongst ourselves, which we will do to begin with anyway. So presumably, up until you developed the pain, were you generally fit and healthy up to that point?
I was so fit and healthy. I never never had a back problem, uh, never really had any physical problem.
Right.
Um, I was obviously quite flexible and supple, and
Mm.
was doing things that I didn't think I could be doing at my age,
Well,
but
looking at the
through my yoga.
photos that you sent in, I was thinking, yes, I don't think I could. No, I couldn't do that.
Well, it was great, and yoga is known for the health of the spine, and to maintain that that's
Yes.
suppleness and the health generally in your body. So yeah, it was a bit of a
How did
shock,
it
to
all
be honest.
start? Right. Sorry. So how did it all start then?
Well, everybody asked me this. Did you do something? Did you do a funny move? Did you? I have no idea how it happened. The situation sort of just came upon me very gradually, probably at the beginning of last year, and
Midway through the pandemic, basically.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And suddenly was getting pains down my leg. I've never really had back pain. It was all referred pain down my leg,
Right.
nerve pain in my foot. And I decided at that point I have great respect for doctors, but I thought, not sure going to a GP with this sort of pain will be beneficial. Okay. So I went straight to a physio, and that was like in the April, I think, my first physio appointment, because I just felt that would, give me more benefit.
Yeah.
And they
And that's
could,
often what many people do when it is something like back pain.
yes,
To somebody who's
felt like the right decision.
Yes, absolutely. Okay.
Yeah.
And how did that go?
Well, it was a relief to share the problem with somebody, because it was bothering me that I wasn't fit. Why wasn't I? And I, got my exercises to do, and I felt reassured because the first thing they did was check for anything very serious, or put my mind at rest that it wasn't anything too terrible. But there was still question marks over what actually was going on. But yeah, I had exercises, and I went back every week, and wasn't really getting any better on a physical level.
And if you were doing yoga already, then basically you were pretty fit and healthy and flexible anyway. So the exercise is much different from what you were incorporating into your yoga?
No, I understood a lot of them because of what I did in yoga. So it was just a case of them guiding me to, to do the right things.
Yeah.
And I was very aware of, what shouldn't I be doing?
Yes.
That was my mindset. Oh God, don't do anything to make it worse. So,
fear. Yes.
So I was glad to have that guidance.
Yeah. For somebody to be clear that no, there's nothing serious going on. That
was my main concern. That
absolutely.
It wasn't going to be anything major.
Yeah. So how did things pan out from then?
Well, my yoga teacher is also an Ayurvedic practitioner, so I've always been very aware, and I follow all her teachings with great respect, because it makes so much sense to me, to the whole mind, body, spirit, and connecting with the seasons, connecting with nature. And that's the way, well, I won't say I live like that, but that is the guidance.
Yes.
So we do a lot of breath work. So I was already in that plane of knowledge that this is how I need to live my life. And yet this completely threw me out of any path that I would normally be following, because I just found that I was focusing on this pain, and the more I focused on the pain, the more negative I got, and the more upset I got, and the more fearful I was. And because of the pandemic and the year that it had been, I realized that I was living under this terrible umbrella of fear. I think that's what it was. It was the fear of what was happening in our world. Yeah. It was the fear of what was happening to me personally. And at one point, my lowest point, I remember thinking, well, I've just lost everything. in life because I
Wow.
wasn't moving properly. I couldn't travel. I couldn't see my kids. I couldn't see friends. You know, we'd all lost so much because of the pandemic. You know,
Yes.
had been taken out of our normal lives. And
Yes.
travel is a big thing to me. My girls live in London, so at one point I didn't see one of them for 6 months, you know, because we were being so careful and they were being so careful
So
not to
hard, wasn't
come,
it? Yes.
and all these things. But I don't think until that point I had acknowledged that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think
Right.
I'd acknowledged it. But then it all became focused on this pain that I was having.
Mm-hmm.
And I got in a really dark place.
Right. Were you able to seek help, or again, that was difficult in the pandemic, wasn't it, to have help from anybody apart from over the phone?
Well,
Zoom?
only the, I was only seeing the physio, and um, I don't think I do suffer from low mood and depression sometimes, and I like to think that I can manage it myself.
Yeah.
But this took me down a whole new path,
Right.
um, of a physical, you know, of this physical thing
Yeah.
that was
And
manifesting.
how was it impacting your life and how you were leading your life?
Well, at its lowest, and it's very hard to remember now. When you feel fine and fit again, it's very easy to just
Yeah.
bypass all bad moments, and you know. But because of this, I've I've gone back. You know, I've gone back um, to look at how it was impacting my life. I mean, at one point, I had to stop doing yoga for a couple of
Hmm.
months completely, which was a
Right.
major deal because I'd normally practice yoga every single day. Um, that was mega. I was limping, so I was going out, well, when we were allowed to go out, and having to think, oh, how can I walk that far? You know, or
Yeah.
even when going to the physio one day, I remember thinking, oh, gosh, I've got to walk from the car park to there. Can I do this? Am I going to be okay? I was
Mm.
going out with my sister, and we were at a shopping centre, and they were literally driving across the shopping car park to pick me up so that I wouldn't have to walk across the car park.
Right.
And at that point, that was just
Yeah.
awful. And then
Yeah.
I thought, how how is this? What's happening to me? What is
Yes.
happening to me? And and I really needed to know for my own peace of mind what was happening.
Hmm.
So it was sort of suggested, and also my suggestion, because the physio wasn't really doing too much to improve my pain, that I would go for an MRI scan, which I paid for myself, just
Right.
because I wanted to understand what
Yes.
was going on. And I can
Yeah.
see now in retrospect why they weren't too keen on me doing that.
Yeah. Well, the evidence does show that people who have scans, it ends up being more costly afterwards because they're people who then are sent for more interventions, the ones that have injections
Well,
or surgery or whatever, because they're going by the scans rather
this
than
was,
anything else.
I can totally see why they weren't encouraging me to do this, because from that point on, things just plummeted downhill
Really?
pretty quickly. Because
Oh.
then I had it in black and white that I had a large bulging disc. Well,
Mm-hmm.
what nobody told me, and what I've learned since, and I've heard you say it in your talks, is that
Mm-hmm.
a massive percentage of people of my age probably have this
Yes,
and don't
absolutely.
know about it. And we're
Mm.
carrying on normally. But because this was pointed out to me now in black and white, it became this alien thing in my back.
Yeah.
It was something to focus on. And then, because of the MRI and because of that result, I then went to see two spinal surgeons.
Right.
And again, no disrespect to the medical profession, which is totally wonderful. But in this instance, it was not the right move for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because from having pain down the side of my leg and nerve pain in my foot, I had this traumatic consultation with the first guy, and I was plunged into this major operations, wheelchairs, limps, surgery. So of course it exacerbated everything.
Yeah, more fear, more focus.
The level of the fear, like,
yeah.
I mean, honestly, at that point, I didn't know who I was. I thought, how can this be happening to me? I've never had a back problem before. Fortunately, my lovely yoga teacher said she would never advise me wrongly, and she said, I really think about this really carefully about this surgery, really not sure. And with her, I did some Ayurvedic treatments called Kati Basti, where you do oil treatments. She makes a dough ring on my back and pours warm oil into it, things like that. So I was doing all these other things to try and help myself. And I just felt this whole advice just felt so alien, so wrong. I did obviously have to consider it, because I was thinking, well, what do I know? I don't know anything about backs. I don't know anything about, if I've got this problem, this is what I've got to do.
Yeah, but how sad that the specialist you're going to, who is supposed to give you the, evidence-based advice, is giving you advice that's not an up-to-date evidence-based, and not looking at the actual failure rate of so much spinal surgery as well. And by the time people are 50, 80% of people will have spinal degeneration, and about 60% of them, according to one study, will have bulging discs. It's a normal part of aging. Dr. Susannah used to say it's like grey hairs of the spine.
And if that information had been given to me with that information alongside it, it would have made a bit more sense to me.
And you can see now why people who have scans, even though NICE guidelines recommend that people are not recommended for scans, because there's only such a small percentage where there is anything that needs doing. And why so many of those people who do see neurospecialists, neurosurgeons, end up actually costing the NHS so much more money for often interventions that are needless. And that's
can
wrong.
cause more problems, and perhaps give you more, well, certainly more trauma. I mean, I think I would have been seriously traumatized even further from having major surgery. And I was so traumatized by this particular consultation that I actually had to go and get a second opinion from another surgeon, because this first one was so dismissive of me, didn't take time to explain anything, didn't give me any other options apart from, well, you can carry on living like you are doing, or you can have major surgery, basically. I mean, it was really horrific. The second one was slightly better, but not great. And in fact, told
still
me to
recommending the surgery.
My husband. Yes, come back with my husband, as if I wasn't able to make a decision on my own.
Oh gosh.
Which was a further insult.
Yes.
But I really honestly could have gone down that route if I hadn't felt so strongly and listened to my instincts and my gut.
Yes.
I felt, no, that this can't be right. I can't do this.
Yeah. But good for you. And by the way, Susannah Salt, she's messaged saying she's listening in the car on the school run. So I know Susannah was
Susannah.
Physiotherapist, so trained, who's the practitioner that you saw. So presumably you're getting near to the point that you saw Susannah. Is that right?
Yes. So it came. It sort of came to be by default in a way, because the other physiotherapist, who is a friend of Susannah's, couldn't fit me in for further treatment. So she recommended I see Susannah. And that was obviously meant to be, because Susannah did her assessment a physical assessment and did the same thing about, you know, making sure there was no serious problems. And she pretty soon went on to speak about these alternative treatments, and the way she spoke, it was like I understood immediately what she was talking about. Right. She was telling me stories about, you know, the people who would come with a, you know, perhaps an arm pain, and there was nothing wrong with their arm, but they, you know, it was coming from what was going on in their heads. And everything she explained, she had such a lovely way of using the fight and flight with animals analogy.
Response, yes.
And and as soon as she started speaking like this, I just thought, yeah, it just made perfect sense to me.
And what was it that the previous physio said to you as she passed you along to Susannah? Because you said that's something you've never forgotten.
She said to me at the time, she said, "Don't worry," she said, "one day you'll be recovering from this and you'll be able to help other people." And I looked at her, and I was in such a mess by then. I thought, well, there's no way I'm going to be able to help anybody. You know, I'm just like I'm a lost soul at this point.
But presumably it gave you a bit of hope.
It gave me hope, and those words from Deborah stuck with me as I walked out the door that day. And she said, "No, you'll get over this, and you'll be able to help other people." So I hope that's what I'm doing by speaking today.
There's always going to be people that will learn from this and benefit.
Yes. So, and I think Susannah said to me, she said I was, because I understood from a yogic perspective the mind, body, spirit connection. She said it was quite easy for her to explain this theory, which I'm not going to say, because I'm sure you can do it much better. But it made perfect sense to me. It made absolutely perfect sense. So pretty soon, maybe after a couple of sessions of physical work, Susannah said quite clearly that there's nothing physical I need to do to you. Nothing. I can't. This isn't going to go away by me doing certain physio exercises with you. And so then we went on to the real Serpa work. And I say to Susannah now, she literally saved my life.
Fantastic.
Because at that point I was doing nothing. I was not practicing yoga. I was very, very living in a very dark place. I had this threat of these words, you know, limping and wheelchairs and all these things that people had said to me, you know, well, if you don't do something, this is going to, you know, this is going to end up with a serious problem. And but
and that's scary. If you're being told by a spinal surgeon you need surgery, or you're going to be in a wheelchair, or you're going to be significantly worse, then it takes a lot of courage to stand up against that and actually to start looking into yourself. Yes, not surprised.
I was terrified, and being given the, you know, the warning signs of if you get this the incontinence problem with the disc problem, all those things to look out for, you know, if your foot drops, if you start limping, all these things that I suddenly thought, wow, this is really going to happen. So on top of the layer of fear of the COVID lifestyle that we'd all had to adopt, and our normal lives being, you know, thrown aside in a way, I had this additional layer of fear, and it was only through working with Susannah that I realized how big an impact the COVID thing had on me personally.
Absolutely. Well, I'd love to move on to that in a moment, if that's all right. At the moment, I just noticed we've got a message from Jan, who says, "Hello both. I agree the MRI was a bleak moment for her too. Like you, I had no explanation to support the MRI at the time." And that's so challenging when you're on your own. You're being told by somebody that you feel is the person who should be able to tell you what you ought to or oughtn't to do. But if they're actually not speaking to you with an understanding of all the pain science, all the evidence base now that does not link pain with the amount of damage that is found in the spine, and that we all have spinal degeneration, whether or not we've got pain. You know, if we don't know that, and we don't maybe even look at the success rate of surgery, for spinal surgery, for example, it can lead people in a very dark place. And I know, like you said, Jan, that was a challenge for you as well. So it's challenging, but that's why the NICE regulations now, National Institute of Clinical Excellence, do not recommend people are sent for MRI scans, because it's so rare that there's something serious going on, and usually there are other ways to sort of, you know, there are other indications that there'll be something serious going on. Hence, Deborah and Susannah actually doing various tests and asking questions and really being able to try and rule out anything more serious.
And I have to take some responsibility for, you know, for going for the MRI and paying for it myself, because I thought that would be my answer to see on, you know, see, oh, okay, well, you've got this, so therefore then you do that, and then you'll be fine. And that's probably, you know, my personality too, that I wanted to understand fully what was going on in my body.
Yeah, and that's natural, and it's quite, you know, no surprise if you are in so much pain, you want to look for the answer, you want to understand it.
Yes, I wanted to know.
Yeah, and we've all grown up with this medical model of believing that there must be a physical problem. If we've got pain in our back or in our legs, then there must be a problem there. And it's taking time, and thank goodness pain science is catching up now to demonstrate that it is neural pathways in the brain that become learned, that become sensitized, and that we need to work on those and work on all these unconscious patterns and protective patterns that are going on that are actually triggering and keeping the pain going. So presumably then, when you started working with Susannah on the SERPA approach, you began to then look at, you know, why the pain would have come on when it came on, because as you said, you haven't had an accident, and if you'd had that bulging disc, you know, that would have been there for goodness knows how long. You know, our spines don't suddenly degenerate overnight and then we get pain. No. So that would have been coming on over months and years. It doesn't.
And my lack of understanding about that, you know, led me to think, oh, it must have been because I've been doing too many forward fold, you know, getting my, you know, doing my whatever I was doing in yoga. Oh, I'd obviously pushed it a bit too far for my age, or something. You know, I really wanted that nice, neat little explanation of what,
or just some exercises to sort the problem out. That's all I need, just some exercises.
Absolutely.
But that's like going to a doctor and asking for a tablet, or, you know, going to a physio and asking for some exercises. And as you found, this is not like that. This is about taking responsibility yourself, learning and understanding about this, but becoming self-empowered. And like you found, completely changing your life around.
Because going back to the mention of tablets, I do take certain tablets, but I don't like taking tablets without knowing that they're really going to help me, or that they are necessary. And I think one of the scary moments was looking at my bedside table, and I'd, you know, every night I was having whatever mixture of paracetamol, ibuprofen, whatever, going out, always making sure I had some in my bag, and thinking, gosh, is this the way I've got to live now? You know, taking painkillers. And all I was being told by the medical practitioners were more and more intense painkillers, which obviously create their own problems with side effects. Yes. And I had to take a few, but I thought, is this really the answer? And thank God it wasn't.
And I know before I came across Dr. Sana's work, I wouldn't go anywhere without painkillers and without antacids, because I lived on antacids literally every day for decades. And I used to buy a box of 100 dispersible cocodamol tablets. I have no idea whether we've got any painkillers in the cupboard at all now. Occasionally I'll have a bit of heartburn. But I know that it's always emotionally induced, and then it's looking at, okay, what's actually triggered this now? But at that time, I thought that was me, and I didn't have pain all the time, but it was so often that I had to make sure I had those tablets there, and we went through them really quickly. Well, me predominantly. So when you began
the way you want to live.
No, absolutely. So when you began to explore this, did you begin to sort of understand what had been building up and why it's developed rather than, was it just the pandemic? Was it the, I mean, there was so much going on in the pandemic for everybody anyway, wasn't there? And everybody was affected in different ways, but it's a very challenging time.
And I know people were affected way more than I was ever affected, but I think that was maybe the trigger point, the feeling like I'd lost so much of my life. I have a place in Turkey which I go to for maybe 3 months of the year for the last 10 years. I hadn't been able to go there. That was a big part of my life, that had changed. Not being able to do my yoga, which also meant I wasn't, because in our yoga classes we'd be meeting every morning on Zoom at 8 o'clock, and we became a support group.
Yes.
We don't just do yoga. We do breathing. We do yoga in its proper sense.
Yes,
which is a great lifestyle, and a great supportive lifestyle. But because I wasn't able to do it physically, I sort of let go of everything. So I lost that support. So that's the second thing. Obviously, all my family and children I wasn't seeing. Even when I went out for a walk with my twin sister who lives in the same town, and we were being told that we had to walk 2 meters apart or something.
Yes.
I think the whole thing was just so traumatic. Looking back, it feels like, did we really do that? I mean, it's horrendous. So it's horrendous. No social life, I mean, being imprisoned in your own home, obviously not as bad as some people were, but yes. So I think all that really, really had a massive effect on me. But then with Susannah, I started delving more deeply and ended up talking about things that I thought, well, what on earth has this got to do with with the pain in my leg? And she encouraged me to maybe deal with emotions from my past that perhaps I hadn't dealt with properly before, even things like my mum having cancer from when I was 8 years old to when I was 30. That was something that was part of my life, but I'd never really
deal with it, don't you?
Oh, I thought,
you just have to deal with it.
I've never acknowledged it as an issue, if you like.
No, right.
But going back and I didn't even half the time even know I was saying these things, and suddenly with this, the way Susannah drew things out, these things came up. So obviously they were in there somewhere. And
you wouldn't have thought about it, you wouldn't have mentioned something unless it was relevant. Absolutely. And then it's looking at the relevance. Because quite often things happen in our past that then create these unconscious patterns within us, like bottling up emotions and maybe never being able to allowed to express emotions, for example, and then we learn to just shut them down, and that's who we are. We don't realize that can be a problem. It might be that we people, if they've lost a parent as a child or a young adult, that that creates an attachment issue. That can, for some people, even just mean that they get upset when somebody doesn't get back to them on a phone call, for example, because that feels like it's triggering that old unconscious pattern. And people don't tend to put those together. There are millions of these different sort of patterns and unconscious protective responses as well, and ways we behave. That until we start considering this, we don't think that it could be relevant in any way.
No, and it was just fascinating where these things came from. I honestly didn't think I had an issue with that, but then I realised that perhaps the anger and the frustration that I was feeling from the pandemic was also stuff from the past, and having to cope when I didn't really want to, or having to grow up having to more quickly having to take care of people, which has always been an issue in my life, being a carer for, you know, for my baby twin sister who's 10 minutes younger. All these things that came up, you know, and it was fascinating. And I think my favorite thing to do was the stream of consciousness writing, where and I love the fact that, because I think when you're journaling, there's always this feeling, oh, what if somebody reads it? But this was just fabulous because I just wrote, and then I wrote on top of my writing, and then screwed it up and threw it away. And I love that. I love that.
It's just a freedom, isn't it? That you're just letting all this stuff out. That you know, well, we can't say that. I'm a nice person. I can't possibly believe that.
No, it was so write whatever you like. You can write rude words and everything.
Yes, absolutely. I just want to pause for a moment there and just say, you know, if anybody wants to ask any questions of Mandy, then please do just put something in the comment box, and we'll make sure that we answer, go through the questions. So do post any questions that you have. So what about one of the other things that are relevant with this, as we know, is personality, because there are certain personalities that where we create, I mean, I have a typical TMS personality, creating a lot of self-induced stress. So being perfectionist, overly conscientious, a people pleaser, worry what other people think, you know, all these are the things that I've had to work on, continue to work on. So is that something that came up for you as well, when you could begin to see how much pressure you put on yourself?
Boxes completely. Perfectionist, like I like being in control. I like to sort things.
And we weren't in control in the pandemic, were we? And I think that was a big thing for many people. You know, and it's then learning how to live with things that you have no control over, focusing on things that we do have control over, but not things that we don't. Yes. That was a big challenge.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Self-induced stress is I'm great at that. Yeah, absolutely.
And then just carrying on, you know, as we've always been carrying on in this coper. I just get on. I'm a caregiver. I'm a coper. But there just comes to that point, as you found, where, you know, there's that the straw that breaks the camel's back. And it can be a tiny little thing, but if things have been building up and over the pandemic, over months, then it's no surprise that then we can get have a symptom. And then when there's that focus on it, and then we're told that, you know, maybe there is a problem or whatever, then that can help. That will then fuel that pain cycle anyway. There's no pathways.
Yes, and on top of that, I'm really not good at being helped. So to accept any help, I remember my sister said, well, you know, you're going to have to let me come and do some hoovering. Oh, no, I can't possibly do that. You know, I'll struggle around limping with the hoover.
Yes.
And I remember at one point she did come and do the hoovering, but it was a big deal for me to accept that help. And I remember one of the, do you call it somatic?
Somatic tracking.
Somatic tracking. At one point with Susannah, she got me into this situation, which is what it makes the family laugh, I think, but that I find it hard to accept help in the kitchen. So, you know, I moan that I have to do everything, but then I don't really want people to help because they're not doing it my way.
Yeah.
So she got me into this. She got me into this situation in the somatic tracking, and that was really interesting.
What happened?
Well, I had to. It was. I could feel the anger I get, you know, when people, they want to help, but they're getting in my way, and they're not doing it the right way. And my sisters would love listening to this because, oh, finally she's accepted.
Understanding it and being able to work with it are different matters, though.
Absolutely.
Awareness, you know, we can't change anything until we're aware of it. And once we're aware of it, at least then we can then start to notice it more. And then, as you say, begin to notice how we're feeling inside.
That was quite a turning point of understanding this whole thing, that it actually does creates the problem in the physical, you know. And that that was a really important moment for me
I'm sure.
to see how it works.
And sometimes it's interesting that if you ask somebody to just imagine doing an activity that is painful, like for you, if it was bending over caused you pain, for the pain to come on at that point, which doesn't always happen, but does often happen, just imagining it brings the pain on, even if it's just faint. That can again really help reinforce the fact that, okay, I'm not doing anything and it's come on. Or what can often happen when we you're thinking about something, or certainly when we're working with clients and we're talking about a particular issue or a particular person, that they start sort of moving around, or they sort of go like this or whatever, and they're not aware of it. And so it's then helping them make, because it's all so unconscious, but by helping them connect. Did you see that you just sort of went like that? You know, what were we just talking about? And they've been sitting there without the pain or very low, and then it comes on. So things like that, and that's why working with someone can be helpful, because they can reflect back, and then you can start noticing things more. And as Susie says, the fable of the stiff upper lip, that's all part of this as well. You know, stiff upper lip, bottle everything up, we're fine. You know, and then I remember talking to somebody recently about vulnerability, and them saying that vulnerability is, you know, I'm able to show my vulnerability, you know, to people, and I, you know, and I was trying to explain how showing vulnerability it can be very threatening. I certainly find it very threatening to show my vulnerability in public, or to even to somebody else apart from my husband. And I'm very good at talking afterwards, for example, about something that's happened, and I had a real meltdown. Gosh, yes, you know, I had a complete meltdown because this. That's not really showing vulnerability. That's using this to explain what happened, to show, you know, yes, it's showing that you are vulnerable. Showing your vulnerability is actually something I did a while ago, which is actually having a meltdown, picking up the phone and talking to somebody. A close friend, and that's the first time, maybe the second time probably in my life, that I've actually done that, because I do not want to anybody to see the messy part of me. And yet we all have messy parts of us, don't we? There are all of us will have meltdowns at some point, and that's showing your vulnerability, not talking about it. It's a
scary place to be, and I honestly would have told anybody that, oh no, I can do that, you know, I'm an emotional person. I can be totally honest, you know, emotionally. And actually, only a couple of weeks ago, I was at a beautiful cacao ceremony with my lovely yoga teacher and my lovely yogi friends. And there weren't many of us, and we were around a beautiful altar. And I had spent a lot of the session already quite emotional and crying. But then when we all came together around the fire, I was more intent on holding it all in and not continuing to cry because people were sitting around, although I felt like it for whatever reason. And I was at the same time was shocked with myself, because I thought, oh gosh, am I really holding all this back? And I wanted to run out of the room and, you know, pretend, oh yeah, I'm fine. And I was really shocked at myself. So obviously there's a lot of work to do still.
But it's a journey. This is a lifelong journey. You know, I've been doing personal development for probably 20 plus years. I certainly came across Dr. Susannah 15 years ago now. And I still get odd symptoms. Okay, there, you know, I think most of the practitioners would say they will. This is the human experience, but the difference is that we don't go into the fear around it, or having woken up with pain, start blaming a physical problem. It's like, okay, the first thing that happens for me is, what am I not dealing with? And then that is great, because even that might be a sore throat, that might be an ache somewhere, but it's immediately about, okay, what am I not dealing with here? You know, and
that was a massive lesson.
Boosting your own self-care. Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely massive. You know, so now I think if I'm feeling something physical, okay, you know, I can still hear her words. Okay, What is it? What's happening? What's happened in your life? What's happened today? What's happened yesterday? Where's it all coming from? And a life-changing
It is.
way of dealing with
Yeah.
pain or whatever.
Yeah.
And yet
And
I still,
sorry, go on.
Still have people asking me, but this thing is still wrong with your back. This disc is still out of place or whatever. It's still bulging. How can you not have any physical symptoms? And it's
Well, that's when it's about showing all the studies that show people who don't have pain have the same things. It's like grey hair. Hair becomes grey as we get older. You know, we start getting knobbly fingers or whatever, and we all get degeneration, whether that's in our spine, our knees, or whatever. It's a normal part of aging, and that degeneration means that discs will bulge over in weak areas. You know, places will wear down or they'll start to narrow. But there's no evidence whatsoever linking the amount of pain somebody has with the amount of degeneration. And plenty of study, I mean, literally loads of studies since the 1990s. And this is the sad thing, that these studies have been out for so long. And yet still, there are some people who are not aware of these studies. And thankfully, there are more and more in the medical world who are aware of them now. But showing that it is, you know, look at all these studies done on people who don't have pain and showing the same symptoms. So the same changes, structural changes. So if those structural changes are happening in people with no pain, then they're obviously not the cause of the pain. And I remember, certainly in my career, and many of my colleagues would say, that we would have people sent with, let's say prolapsed disc of a certain nerve, and yet maybe they had pain down the other side, or the pain moved around, or it didn't fit that one nerve that was being compressed. And yet we would, with only the medical model to follow, we would try and explain it to fit that particular finding on the scans, despite the fact it didn't make sense. And that's one of the reasons that I began to question things and just say, it doesn't make sense. You know, you've got a bulging disc there. Why have you got pain on the other side? Or why is the pain moving around? And the other thing is, for clients, for people, for any of us with pain, to look at the patterns. You know, sometimes it fits, it's the same, and it hurts when you bend, it doesn't when you straighten up or whatever. Sometimes it hurts one day, not another day. Sometimes you can lie on one bed and it's one mattress, it's fine. You go on another one, and that particular mattress always causes pain. So people blame the mattress, don't they? Buy a new mattress, buy a new car, buy a new whatever. I had so many neck pillows, literally about a dozen neck pillows that I bought because I kept having neck pain. And I passed them on to clients saying, well, it didn't work for me, let's see if it helps you. And I used to take a pillow with me if I went to travel anywhere. Whereas actually I don't give a damn what, well, I like one for comfort, but I don't get neck pain, and I certainly don't, I'm not bothered what pillow I'm sleeping with. So there are all these things that just play a part. So
and I know from
you as well. Well done, Mandy. I'm so proud of you. So Deborah Thomas, presumably that's Susannah's colleague.
Oh, Deborah.
That's nice.
How lovely. How lovely. Honestly, those two girls are wonderful.
Yeah. Fantastic. Nice to see you here, Deborah.
And I know how things can change so easily just from our daily pranayama, you know, our breath work in yoga, how we can change our states. Like, it, you know, I remember when I first experienced it, I said, oh, this is like magic, you know, and yet it's something we're not taught to do on a, you know, general level. Oh, well, if you breathe like that, then it might calm you down. You know, we all know that oh, take a deep breath, but you know, the breath work that we do. Yeah,
it's the first thing. Pull yourself together. Yeah, quite. It's the first thing I teach clients when I work with them. The first thing is looking at how they're breathing, because most people will have dysfunctional breathing. And they, as you say, they're not aware how connected that is with emotions, with stress, with fear.
No.
And by working on the breath work, by working on breathing, then we can actually balance the heart as well and get coherence between the breathing, the heart, and the blood pressure. And it's so important for us to recognize that and to begin to notice, become more somatically aware and more aware of how we're feeling. Because if we work on that more, then we're less likely to have pain or any other symptom that comes up that's a stress-induced symptom.
And I was probably going on a downward spiral with all that, because I'd let yoga go, I'd let the breathing go, I'd let everything go, because I just ended up falling into this deep, dark hole. And it was the worst thing I could have done. But
and this is why I feel this is not a treatment for pain, is it? This is lifestyle. If you go back to just sort of pushing against everything and trying to control everything, and being a perfectionist, overly conscientious, not dealing with how you're feeling, or because often when we're triggered in the now, it's triggering old stuff as well. As soon as we become aware of being triggered and then learning the tools to deal with how we're feeling, then we can let them be processed, let them pass by, rather than actually then just keeping on, just getting on and bottling everything up and then manifesting with a pain that we then just have no clue and no awareness that it would be linked to something other than what we're doing. Like when I used to open the garage door, and it's a heavy garage door, still heavy, especially when it's raining. I keep saying to my husband, I want a new garage door. I can't open it when it's pouring with rain. But I used to open the door, and I'd do it every day. But on occasion, I'd suddenly get neck pain or arm pain, and I'd blame the garage door. Not for one moment did I ever think about, well, where was I going, or where have I come from, what's going on in my life? And yet it's never happened since then, 15 years now. And it used to happen a few times a year. But we don't think like that when our awareness is on what's going on physically.
Yes, absolutely. That becomes your focus, and that's the only thing that matters. And even I remember lying in bed thinking, oh God, am I going to be able to sleep, because is this pain going to stay with me? And then of course the more you're thinking that, then the higher level of pain. And
and it's like those the videos of the basketball players passing the ball. Have you seen that one?
No.
When you're looking at where your attention is, and you can go onto YouTube and just put in basketball players and attention, and you focus. They're telling you to count how many times, I think it's the white team, pass the ball, and you're so busy counting how many times the ball's going that you don't notice that there's a man in a gorilla suit has walked right across the middle of the screen, sort of gone like that, and then walks off again. And I know my husband didn't notice him, and he refused to believe it until we rewound it and then showed it to him again. There are a lot of videos like that, which are they're fun to share with people. And they say about 50% of people don't see the gorilla, and that's been my experience, and I've shown it with hundreds and hundreds of people over the years. So there are other ones, and basically it's showing that what we focus on, we are aware of that. Where we put our attention, that's what's happening. Like when I'm opening the garage door, my attention, I'm a physio, I've been trained physically. Opening the garage door, I get neck pain, it has to be physical. A complete unawareness of anything else that might have been relevant. And once you become aware of that, and then you think, okay, I've woken up with pain. Why have I woken up with pain? What was going on the night before? Then you can start working on that. And I think what's even more interesting is that the gorilla test was also done with a group of radiologists who were reading scans. So they were trying to count cancer cells on MRI scans, and I think they had 5 or 6 sets of scans, different people. And in the last set, they superimposed an outline of a gorilla that was apparently 40 times the size of the cancer cells. And it was an outline of gorilla over all of the scans of the last client. And I'm trying to remember, it was either 82% or 92% of these radiologists did not see the gorilla. because they're so focused on what they're looking at. And it just shows that you know, we're not aware of these, our patterns, our protective patterns of our behaviors and things like that, that are constantly affecting how we're behaving, how we're moving forward, what's happening in our lives. And I still find it fascinating. And Susannah was saying, so much of this is about your belief system. That's absolutely true, Susannah. Deborah says we get more of what we pay attention to. And as Susie says, it's not the destination, it's the journey. Yeah, it's, you know, it absolutely is. Look at how you, and pay more attention to ourselves, focusing on us, because if we don't look after ourselves, how can we look after somebody else? And I think that's really important. This is about self-care, and becoming self-empowered as well.
Yes.
So this has been great, Mandy. Thank you so much for telling us your story. I know that certainly from the amount of people that have been watching and liking it and everything, and we've had some questions as well. And I think it's just been interesting to hear your account and how it's changed your life so much. So just to finish off, you know, you are now, tell people how has it changed your life, and if there's one thing you could suggest to people, what would you suggest?
Well, to be aware, to you know, to not focus on what's happening physically, to be more aware of maybe what's happening in your head, and deal with it in maybe on an emotional level, rather than put your focus on that knee pain or back pain. Yes. The second thing I would say is follow your instincts. I'm so glad I followed my instincts and didn't end up on that operating theatre, in that operating theatre. And you know, I'm not here to discourage people from surgery, but I know that it wasn't appropriate for me, and I still find it absolutely terrifying that I could have gone down that route if I hadn't felt there were alternatives. And I'm just so grateful that I came across this program, and honestly, I feel like it saved my life.
Great, that's wonderful. And Susannah's saying you're an inspiration.
Oh, bless. She's the inspiration. You're the inspiration.
And so basically, you are now back to living your life to full, enjoying your yoga and doing anything.
I'm doing everything I was doing, including my headstand. Yes. And I'm so appreciative, I must admit that as well. You know, it's a classic thing, but you know, when you have lost something, then you go back to what you saw as your norm, and you're much more appreciative. And I'm very appreciative of what I can do now, and that I've got myself out of that hole that I was in with your help. So thank you.
Well, that's wonderful. I know you're going to be helping so many people, because of course this will be recorded and people will be able to watch it later. Shout out to Deborah and Susannah as well. And,
absolutely.
Well done, you, because it's down to you. Well, in the end, it's down to you.
It was with their encouragement and feeling that they were behind me, and that the program was there for to help us, and
having that hope is so important, isn't it?
That hope, and it made perfect sense to me, everything I did. So I'm very grateful to you.
Thank you very much, Mandy, and thanks everybody for joining us. And we'll post this. It'll be on Facebook anyway, and we'll be adding it to the website as well. Okay, bye for now. Thanks very much.
Bye.